They didn't know I was still in the house. I had come back early from my walk because my left knee was acting up again. The cold had settled into it the way cold does when you get past 65, deep and stubborn, like it's decided to stay. I came in through the side door, the one off the laundry room, because the front porch steps were icy and I didn't trust them. I set my coat on the hook. I didn't call out. I just stood there for a moment, catching my breath, and that's when I heard them. My son was in the living room. His wife was with him. They were talking the way people talk when they think no one is listening. Loose, careless, honest. "She can't keep doing this on her own," my daughter-in-law said. "You saw how she looked at Thanksgiving. Tired. She's not managing." "I know," my son said. "The house is too big for one person. And honestly, it's just sitting there. All that equity just sitting there." I stood very still. "She'd be fine somewhere smaller," she said. "Somewhere with people her age, where someone's actually watching out for her." "It's not that simple," my son said. "It is, though. We just have to be the ones to say it first, before it becomes a crisis." I looked down at my hands. They were shaking a little, not from the cold. I had lived in that house for 31 years. I want to be clear about something before I go any further. I am not a dramatic woman. I have never been the kind of person who makes a scene or holds a grudge or sits in a dark room, feeding an old hurt until it grows into something monstrous. I raised 2 children. I worked for 22 years as an office manager for a medical practice. I kept the books. I kept the schedule. I kept the peace. When my husband passed 9 years ago, I handled every single thing: the funeral, the estate, the thank you cards, the long empty weeks after, and I did it without falling apart, because falling apart wasn't something I had time for. So when I say that what I heard that afternoon in my own laundry room changed something in me, I need you to understand that I don't say that lightly. My name is Louise. I'm 68 years old. And until that Wednesday in November, I believed that my family and I understood each other. Let me tell you about the house. My husband and I bought it in 1993, the year our younger one started kindergarten. It was more than we could really afford at the time. But he said, "Lou, this is the one," and I believed him because he was right about things like that. 4 bedrooms, a big kitchen, a yard that backed up to a creek you could hear in spring when the snow melted. We put 22 years into that house. New roof in 2004. Kitchen renovation in 2009. The back porch was his project. He spent 2 summers getting it right, level board by level board, and when he was done, he sat out there every evening from May until October, like it was his reward for everything. When he died, I thought about selling. Everyone assumed I would. The house was large for one person. That part was true. But I stayed because the house still held him somehow, in the way that houses do, in the slope of the floor near the back door, in the smell of the garage, in the particular creak of the 3rd step on the staircase. I stayed, and I made it work. I took in a tenant for 2 years, a quiet woman who used the upstairs guest room and paid on time, and moved to Phoenix to be near her grandchildren. After that, I kept the room empty and managed on my own. I shoveled my own walk in winter. I mowed my own lawn until 2 years ago, when my knee started its complaints, and then I hired the teenager next door. I drove myself to every appointment, cooked my own meals, kept my garden, called my children every Sunday. I was not a woman who needed to be managed. I had not planned to eavesdrop. I want to be clear about that too. I was simply standing in my own laundry room with a sore knee and a damp coat, and the voices came to me before I had any choice in the matter. "The thing is," my daughter-in-law was saying, "she needs more than we can give her from 40 minutes away. That's just reality." "She's never asked us for anything," my son said. "That's exactly the problem. She won't ask. So it just builds until something goes wrong, and then we're dealing with a crisis instead of a plan." I could hear the reasonableness in her voice. That's what got me. It was all so reasonable. They weren't being cruel. They were being practical, which in some ways was worse. The Pines has a waiting list, she said. I looked. It's not as long as you'd think if you get in early. The Pines. I knew what that was. It was the assisted living community on the far side of town, the one with the buses that took residents to doctor's appointments and the dining room with the round tables and the Monday movie screenings. I had driven past it 100 times. I had never once thought about it in relation to myself. She's 68, my son said. I know, but early is better. We'd just be getting her on the list, that's all. There was a pause. And the house? My son said. We could talk to a realtor. Just to get a number. Just to know. I had heard enough. I went back out the side door, very quietly, and I sat in my car in the driveway in the cold for a long time. I did not go back inside for 40 minutes. When I did, I called out cheerfully from the front door I had gone around and said I'd decided to drive to the pharmacy after my walk after all, and had they been waiting on me for lunch? My daughter-in-law said no, of course not, and got up to make sandwiches, and my son came into the kitchen and talked to me about the traffic on the interstate, and we all ate together at my kitchen table like nothing at all had happened. I was very good that afternoon. I complimented the soup she'd brought in a container from home. I asked about the children, my grandchildren, who were at school and would be over later. I laughed at the right moments. I helped clear the table, and the whole time, something quiet and certain was settling inside me like water finding its level. That night, after they'd gone home, I sat at the desk in the room I used as a study, the small one off the hallway, where I'd always paid the bills, and I got out the folder. I keep good records. 22 years as an office manager will do that to a person. I have a folder for every significant financial transaction I've made in the last decade, organized by year, with a summary sheet at the front. I opened it, and I started reading. The down payment help. 12 years ago, when my son and his wife bought their first home, I had given them $40,000. My husband was still alive then. We had the money, and they needed it, and that's what parents do. I remembered the conversation clearly. I remembered my husband writing the check. I remembered my son's face. I turned to the next page. The car. 8 years ago, my son had lost his job for 7 months. And during that time, I had made 3 of his car payments, $840 each, and covered 2 months of their health insurance because his wife was pregnant with their second child and they couldn't let the coverage lapse. Next page. The kitchen. 6 years ago, they had renovated their kitchen. They were short $14,000 after the contractor's final bill came in higher than expected. I had written the check. I kept reading. There were smaller things too. A plane ticket for a work trip he'd needed to take on short notice. A semester of after-school care for my granddaughter when the costs went up and their budget didn't. Christmas one year when they'd asked me gently if I could cover the gifts for the children because it had been a hard year. I had said, of course. I had meant it. I would do all of it again. But I sat there in my study at 11 o'clock at night, and I looked at the total, and I let myself see it clearly for the first time. More than $90,000 over 12 years. Not a loan, a gift. Freely given. I had never once asked for anything in return, and I did not ask for anything now. But I looked at that number, and then I thought about my daughter-in-law's voice saying, all that equity just sitting there, and something in me drew a very clean, very quiet line. I slept better than I expected to. In the morning, I called my attorney. Her name is Alice, and she's been handling my affairs for years. I told her I wanted to come in before the end of the week. She fit me in on Friday. I also called my friend Cecile, who has been my closest friend for 37 years. We met when our children were in the same third-grade class, and we have kept each other company through jobs and moves and husbands and losses and every ordinary disaster that a life contains. I asked if she wanted to have lunch Thursday, and she said she had been about to call me to ask the same thing. which is one of the things I love about her. I did not tell either of them everything right away. I wanted to think first. I spent that week thinking. I walked in the mornings when my knee allowed it, slowly, down to the end of the street and back. I cooked real meals for myself and ate them at the table instead of standing at the counter. I looked around my house, at the back porch my husband had built, at the kitchen I knew by heart, at the garden that was sleeping under the frost, waiting for April. And I thought about what I wanted, not what anyone else needed. What I wanted. It was a strange exercise. I had not done it in a very long time. Lunch with Cecile was at the Italian place we always go to. The one with the red booths and the bread that comes in a basket with actual butter. We ordered, and then she looked at me and said, "All right, what happened?" The way she does, because she has always been able to read me without any trouble. So I told her. She listened the way Cecile always listens, completely, without interrupting, without her face giving away what she was thinking until I was finished. When I was done, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What are you going to do?" "I've already started," I said. She nodded slowly. "Good," she said. "Good for you, Lou." We ate our pasta and talked for a long time, and by the time we left, I felt lighter than I had in years, not because anything was resolved yet, just because I had said it out loud to someone who loved me, and she had not tried to talk me out of anything. Alice's office smells like coffee and old paper, which I have always found comforting. She's about my age, sharp, with reading glasses she's always losing and finding. I sat across from her desk on Friday and told her what I wanted. I wanted to review my will. The current version left the house, and the bulk of my estate divided equally between my son and my daughter, who lives in Portland and is a very different kind of person from her brother, and who I'll come back to. I had written it 8 years ago and not revisited it since my husband died. I told Alice I wanted to make some changes. We talked for an hour and a half. She asked good questions, the way lawyers do. The kind that make you say out loud what you've only been thinking, and it helps. By the time I left, we had a plan. I was leaving the house to my daughter, outright. She had never asked me for anything, had built her own life from the ground up, and she loved that house the way I loved it. She knew every room. She'd helped me plant the garden. She had her father's same feeling for a place that meant something, a significant portion of the liquid assets. The savings, the investments, I was dividing differently than before. A portion to my daughter, a portion to Cecile's youngest, who is studying to be a nurse and whom I have watched grow up and who is one of the finest young people I know. A portion to the Library Foundation in town, which runs an after-school program I've believed in for years. My son was not being cut out entirely, but the number was different. Alice didn't blink. She'd seen this before. "Do you want to tell him?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. Thanksgiving came on a Thursday, the way it always does. My daughter flew in from Portland on Tuesday and stayed with me, sleeping in the room that used to be hers, borrowing my cardigan the way she always does. We cooked together. She makes the pies. I make everything else. We've divided it that way for years. And we talked in the kitchen for hours, the way you can with someone who knows you completely. I did not tell her about the will yet. I had decided to wait until it was finalized, signed, real. My son and his wife arrived Thursday morning with the children and 2 bottles of wine and a very large bag of dinner rolls that my daughter-in-law had clearly bought at the Good Bakery, which I noticed and appreciated. We sat around my table, all of us, and the food was good and the children were noisy in the best way, and for a while it was simply Thanksgiving. After dinner, while the kids were watching something in the other room and my daughter was doing dishes, she insists, I've stopped fighting it. My son came and sat next to me on the back porch. It was cold. We both had our coats on. He said, "Mom, I've been wanting to talk to you about something." I waited. "We've been thinking," he said, "about whether it might make sense, down the road, not now, for you to think about a smaller place, something easier to manage." There's actually a really nice community, the Pines, I said. He stopped. I know, I said. I heard you. Last month. In the living room. He was quiet for a long time. I'm not angry, I said, and I meant it. I understand what you were trying to do, but I want you to know that I've thought about my situation very carefully, and I've made some decisions about my future. I let that sit for a moment. I'm staying in the house, I said. It's my house. I'm 68 years old, and my knee hurts sometimes, and that's all. I'm not going anywhere. He started to say something. I've also updated my will, I said. Alice helped me. It's all in order. He went very still. I'm not telling you this as a threat, I said. I'm telling you because it's done, and because you should know, and because I think honesty between us is better than the other thing. I looked out at the creek. You couldn't see it in the dark, but you could hear it, just barely. I gave you a great deal over the years, and I gave it gladly. That doesn't change. But I am allowed to decide what comes next. That's mine. We sat there in the cold for a while without talking. Eventually, he said, very quietly, I didn't mean for it to come out the way it did. I know, I said. I know you didn't. We went back inside. We had pie. My granddaughter fell asleep on the couch, and my son carried her to the car, her head on his shoulder, and that image was so familiar, so full of everything that was still true between us, that I had to look away for a moment. My daughter called me the next week from Portland. She had spoken to her brother, he had called her, which surprised me, and she wanted to know how I was. I'm fine, I told her. Better than fine. He felt bad, she said. Good, I said. He should think about things more. She laughed. Mom, I mean it kindly, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Are you happy in the house? I looked out the kitchen window at the backyard, at the porch, at the garden that was all frost and brown stems and waiting. Yes, I said. I am. Then stay, she said. Just stay. The will was signed and finalized 2 weeks later. Alice called to confirm. I thanked her and hung up and sat at my desk for a while. The same desk where I'd opened the folder that November night, and I thought about what it felt like to have handled something. It felt like my husband would have recognized in me. That steadiness, that willingness to be honest, even when honesty cost something. It felt like being myself. I have a life I have built, a house I know by heart, a friend who will always tell me the truth over pasta and red booth, a daughter who borrows my cardigans, a garden waiting for spring. I am 68 years old. My knee hurts sometimes. The third step still creaks. I am not going anywhere. I've thought a lot about what it means to finally see something clearly. Not dramatically, not all at once. Just you're standing in a hallway with a sore knee and a damp coat, and you hear the truth coming through a wall, and something in you goes very still, and after that you can't unknow it. That's what happened to me. And looking back now, I don't think I was unlucky to have heard it. I think I was lucky, because I still had time to act. The hardest thing isn't what people do to you. It's what you let happen by staying quiet about what you need and what you're worth. I had spent years being the kind of woman who handles things, who writes the check, who doesn't ask for anything back, who shows up and manages and never once says, I need something too. I thought that was strength, and some of it was. But some of it was also just habit. The habit of making yourself small so that other people can feel comfortable. What I learned, not from a book, not from anyone's advice, but from sitting at my own desk at 11 o'clock at night and looking at a number, is that what you give and what you receive have to have some kind of honest relationship to each other. Not transactional, not kept score, but honest. When you give without limit and without boundary, you don't just exhaust yourself. You teach people around you that there is no limit, that you will always absorb whatever they don't want to carry. And then when you finally stop, they're confused, even hurt, because you changed the rules of a game you never agreed to play. My son is not a bad person. I want to be very clear about that. He loves me in his way. But love without attentiveness becomes something else over time. It becomes assumption. It becomes taking for granted. And the cause of that wasn't entirely his. I had let it happen. Every time I said, of course, when I meant this is hard for me. Every time I wrote a check without saying, I hope you know what this cost me. Every time I smiled over lunch while something tightened in my chest. What turned things around wasn't anger. It was clarity. I got clear about what I had, about what I wanted, about where I wanted to be in 10 years. And then I acted from that clarity, quietly, without drama, without a confrontation that would only have hurt everyone and resolved nothing. I called Alice. I had lunch with Cecile. I looked at my garden and I made my decision. That's the thing about wisdom that nobody tells you when you're young. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with a lesson attached. It just shows up one day as the ability to sit still with a hard truth and then do the next right thing. To not flinch, to not perform, to handle it. I am 68 years old and I have been handling things my whole life. But there is a difference between handling things for other people and handling things for yourself. The second kind takes more courage. The second kind is what I finally learned to do. My house still stands. The third step still creaks. The garden is waiting for spring. And I am right where I decided to be.